Human beings like clarity. We like neat categories. Good versus evil, male versus female, believer versus non-believer. These black and white divisions feel simple. They make the world easier to navigate. But sometimes the drive for simplicity becomes a trap. We start imagining that reality itself is carved into fixed categories, that things and people carry an unchanging essence that defines what they are once and for all. This is essentialist thinking. It feels intuitive, it feels safe, but it's a mistake. One that distorts Darwin's theory of evolution, fuels racism, excuses violence in the Bible, and narrows our understanding of gender identity and intersex conditions. Essentialism is the idea that for any given category, whether it's dog, human, or chair, there is some fixed essence or a closed set of features that makes something truly belong to it. Under essentialist thinking, you either have the essence or you don't. Closely related to this is black and white thinking, the habit of splitting the world into rigid opposites, right versus wrong, masculine versus feminine, us versus them. These two patterns of thought reinforce each other. Once you believe a category has a pure essence, it's tempting to force everything into absolute boxes. But reality doesn't work like that. The world is full of continuums, gradients, and overlaps. Categories are useful tools, but they are not the hidden structure of reality itself. Never confuse the map for the territory. So why does this matter? Because essentialism blinds us to variation, complexity, and change. It makes us mistake human labels for eternal truths. And when applied to people, it often leads to injustice. Let's look at some areas where essentialist thinking has caused real harm. Scientific illiteracy about evolution, racism, religious violence, and the gender debate. For centuries, people believed species were fixed. A cat was a cat because it carried the essence of catness. But Darwin's theory of evolution overturned this. Species are not closed sets, but fuzzy and open-ended ones. They are populations that adapt over time. There is no eternal cat, only a lineage of animal populations gradually changing. To better understand this, think about language change. When did Latin stop and French begin? There was no single day or person when one ended and the other started. Latin simply changed slowly across centuries and regions until different forms emerged. French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian. The boundaries were drawn afterwards by us. And even French today is not fixed. It keeps evolving. New slang, new pronunciations, new borrowings, new grammatical features. One day, it will become something else again. Populations of organisms evolve in the same way. Human populations are not a sudden break from earlier hominin populations, just as French was not a sudden break from Latin. But essentialist thinking hides this continuity, demanding sharp eternal categories where none exist. And that misunderstanding still fuels confusion today when people reject or misinterpret evolution. Is race biological? Or is it a social category we've mistaken for nature? Essentialist thinking underpins racism and ethnic prejudice. The myth of biological races, the idea that being black, white, Arab, or Jewish makes someone inherently intelligent or unintelligent, moral or immoral, has justified centuries of bigotry. Some push back, But races are real. Different groups have different genes. Yes, human populations have genetic variations, but they do not line up neatly with racial labels. In fact, genetic differences within so-called races are often greater than between them. The categories we call races are social constructs, not closed biological sets. Once people are reduced to fixed categories, stereotypes set in. Who you are as an individual no longer matters. Only the category assigned to you does. Does the Bible command genocide? And if so, how do apologists defend the problem of Old Testament violence? In the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, the Israelites are commanded to wipe out entire peoples, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, down to the very last child. To modern readers, that is clearly genocide. But essentialist thinking reframes it. Apologists argue these weren't really individuals with worth. Every single one of them was the bearer of a cursed essence, idolatrous, unclean, wicked, evil. When people are seen as nothing more than embodiments of an essence, atrocities can be rationalized as divine justice. And this logic still echoes in sectarian conflicts today. Is gender really binary? Or does biology tell a more complex story? Nowhere is essentialist thinking more visible than in debates about sex, gender identity, and transgender and intersex people. Many argue that being male or female comes down to a fixed biological essence. XX equals female, XY equals male, and anything else, like XXY individuals or XO individuals, is an error. It's true that XX and XY are the most common patterns, but common does not mean absolute. The exceptions exist, and when they do, the category is not closed. Essentialist thinking pretends variation is error. Biology shows variation is part of reality. Evolution does not deal in errors. If every departure from the old pattern were a mistake, then even the appearance of sexual reproduction would have been an error, since it broke away from asexual reproduction, which came first. In reality, it was just another pathway that worked. The same holds today. Mosaicism, where people carry both XX and XY cell lines in their body, already has documented cases of people reproducing. If such cases ever became widespread, that would simply become a new normal. Evolution doesn't grade against a perfect ideal. If it works, it works. Biological sex is multi-layered. Chromosomes, hormones, gonads, anatomy. These don't always align. Intersex conditions show that the binary is porous. Gender identity adds another layer, our self-understanding of who we are. Critics sometimes object, but biology and gender identity aren't the same. True, but essentialist thinking collapses them into one, insisting chromosomes alone must settle gender. A non-essentialist view recognizes multiple overlapping levels: biology, psychology, culture, all part of the picture. When essentialist thinking dominates, those who don't fit rigid categories are told they are wrong, unnatural, freaks. But that's not the truth of human diversity. That's the illusion of black and white thinking. So why do we keep falling into essentialism? Because it's an easy evolutionary shortcut. Our ancestors survived by categorizing quickly: safe or dangerous, friend or foe, edible or poisonous. Clear categories help them make fast decisions. But what once helped survival now oversimplifies a world that is much more complex. Essentialism offers certitude, that is, a feeling of certainty, but certitude at the expense of truth and compassion. The world is not built on essences. It is built on continuities, variation, and change. Darwin's theory shows that evolution is fluid. History shows us racism and prejudice grow from false ideas of fixed categories. Bible apologetics shows how essentialism can have people justifying genocide. And the gender debate shows us the harm caused by the myth of a strict binary. Rejecting essentialism doesn't mean abandoning categories. It means recognizing them as tools we create, not absolute truths carved into the universe.